Nation Sports Show.
Turn me up. Turn me up. Turn me up. Turn me up.
From the gridiron to the court, talking all that is sport, breaking down the latest news, scores, and more. Welcome to our Nation Sports Show. Surprise, surprise, surprise. What better than one show during the week when you can get two shows in a row? Because that is right, ladies and gentlemen, tonight on a special week in the world of sports when it comes to all of the happenings with the latest NFL season previews beginning this week with the AFC East and the AFC West. And also the news with the UFC deal with Paramount Plus that begins next year. Man, oh man, oh man. What a great time to be a sports fan. And again, surprise. Y'all didn't see this coming. Like an RKO out of nowhere. For the first time in quite some time, the sports show is coming at you on a Thursday night at our normal time of 7 p.m. Eastern, 6 Central, 4 p.m. Pacific. What is going on? I am your host, Stephen Wyand. What is going on, everybody? Thank you for joining in tonight. And I will be giving my analysis on the AFC East and the AFC West. And what an incredible time it is to be a sports fan because the NFL season is very much almost here. The preseason is hot and heavy and is already underway. And before I get to giving my thoughts on the AFC East and the AFC West, also got to plug the social media platforms up first on Twitter or X at ON_Sports Show, Facebook.com/Nation Sports Show. And where right now this show is being broadcasted to you on a special Thursday night, 7 o'clock Eastern Standard Time, 6 o'clock Central, 4 o'clock in the West. That is right, youtube.com/Nation Sports Show. Be sure to like, share, subscribe, and all of that good stuff to all your family and your friends that love the world of sports. And yes, ladies and gentlemen, let's get this show on the road. And I do want to talk about before I get to the NFL stuff with the AFC East and the AFC West, I do want to talk about the deal that was announced on Monday that the UFC and TKO have agreed to a whopping $7.7 billion contract, massive contract that will have every single fight night and every single numbered, and this is a key word, ladies and gentlemen, premium live event. No longer will the UFC be in the pay-per-view business, and thank God. Oh, thank God. Now, full disclosure, I have always been a fan of MMA. I remember when I rented the UFC's first pay-per-view, UFC 1, the beginning, that was broadcasted from the Minickle Sports Arena in Denver, Colorado, back in November of 93. When that VHS tape came out in stores, I rented it, and I thoroughly enjoyed it. And for over 30 years, the UFC has gone through its ups and its downs. They've had their superstars, such as Royce Gracie and Ken Shamrock and Denby Severin and Tito Ortiz and obviously Ken Shamrock, like I mentioned, and uh, Chuck Liddell and Randy Couture. I mean, you name it. I mean, they have had a who's who of star talents. Obviously, Brock Lesnar came into the UFC, and just so many, great fighters. Ronda Rousey, Holly Holm on the female side, Misha Tate. I mean, so many, Amanda Nunes. I mean, so many great fighters across both spectrums of male and female. And the UFC has always been in the pay per view business for the last 30 some odd years. And the WWE changed course with the launch of the WWE Network back in 2014. And I firmly believe that when the WWE launched the network 11 years ago, that this was going to be a game changer. Slowly but surely, all of these major events were going to be broadcasted on streaming services. That was the future of the business, of the entertainment industry. And not surprised, years later, you've seen Netflix specials when it comes to boxing, when it comes to stand up specials with comedians and stuff like that. We have seen the WWE now with their flagship show Monday Night Raw since January 6th of this year, having their flagship show on Netflix, and the WWE PLEs are streaming internationally besides the US. Everywhere else but the US is streaming on Netflix. And what I'm getting at here is when the PLE stuff started happening and you weren't having to pay an extra charge. The only price you were having to pay was the price of your subscription to the content. Because essentially, now, even though you're not watching the stuff for free, technically you are when it comes to watching it for free, because afterwards you're paying for the subscription. And I honestly believe that when the pay-per-view market went away predominantly for WWE, that was going to be a game changer, because it got so tired when I became an adult, and when I had the freedoms as a grown adult to order these pay-per-views, and I would always make sure with my parents, like, hey, can I order this? Like, hey, you're a grown adult, you can do whatever you want. And but there were times where I would order some of these events and I would feel like I'm not getting my money's worth. Because I mean, at the time, these pay-per-views were 55 to 60 bucks. And WrestleMania, I cannot remember the numbers off the top of my head, but WrestleMania used to be, God, like 65, $70. Something like that. Like, my God. Because there for a while, I was not ordering these shows because it adds up. It adds up over a 12-month period. And the UFC was still doing the pay per view market, and their pay per views gradually every single year, the numbers kept going up. I mean, again, not having these numbers in front of me, just off the top of my head, just, shooting from the hip. I think I remember some of these pay-per-views being like $59.99, then $69.99, and for the last couple of years they've been $79.99. So essentially $80. I'm sorry, Dana White, I get it. You've always stuck by that model, but I think that Dana White and the rest of the people at the Ultimate Fighting Championship have seen the business of professional wrestling thriving at such a high level with WWE's business. And this is my thing, ladies and gentlemen, when it comes to how the WWE has single-handedly changed how, in my opinion, they have changed how we as combat sports enthusiasts view our content or want to view our content. Because if you can somehow condense your content not being on so many and I get it, when WWE announced that they're sending, their PLEs to ESPN, a lot of people that were up in arms going, "Oh, I'm not paying $30 for another streaming service." Okay, I get that. However, if you have YouTube TV like I do, if you have a traditional cable, you can sign in to the ESPN brand new app when that app launches in the fall. Sign into the app, and when the WWE content moves over to ESPN being broadcasted, such as WrestleMania and the Rumble, SummerSlam, stuff like that next year, you don't have to pay $30 more. You can essentially watch that shit for free because the only price you're having to pay is whenever your subscription for your cable or your cable streaming platform like YouTube TV or Spectrum's streaming service and stuff like that, or obviously your cable bill whenever the due date for that is. Like it could be, if let's just throw numbers out there. Let's say if, like for instance with UFC, let's say if the first UFC PLE is on February 20th and your cable bill does not have to be paid until, let's say, February 24th to February 25th. You're not having to have an upcharge. You can still tune into the event without having to fork out a shit ton of money. Because honestly, guys, there for a while, I was not wanting to spend the money on UFC pay-per-views. Because, as always, with the UFC being a legit combat sport, where the fights are real, then let's be honest, guys, there's even a little pro wrestling in there, so it's also partially a work when it comes to how they talk trash and stuff like that to promote the fights. But I digress. They've been asking the fans, the customers, the consumers to shell out $79.99, essentially $80 for each pay per view the last couple of years, so on and so forth. I am sorry, but not everybody can afford to spend that kind of money. And to my surprise, and to a lot of people's surprises, the WWE is not going to upcharge the fans when it comes to the services of watching WrestleMania and Backlash and whatever they broadcast on the ESPN app. I mean, who would have thought in a world where the WWE is going to be broadcasted on the worldwide leader in sports, ESPN? ESPN has not had professional wrestling on their network in years. In years. And it is amazing to see how the wrestling business is thriving. And I'm sorry, I don't care how great the UFC product can be at times. You're asking your customers every single month to shell out $79.99 for a pay-per-view? I'm sorry. Not everybody is going to do that. You can be a fan of something and not break the bank to watch a show if you don't want to. If you don't deem it's worth your time, you don't have to watch it. Because I honestly feel like there are people that watch UFC, and then there are people that are fans of, let's call it what it is, AEW. There are AEW fans, there are UFC fans that have been programmed for the last several years. AEW's been around for 6 years, and the UFC's been around for 32 years going on. These fans have been programmed to pay $49.99 for AEW pay-per-views and UFC's numbers, like I've mentioned, have grown 59, 69, 79, whatever. You're asking these people that are fans of wrestling and MMA for the last couple of years to shell out that kind of money. Not everybody can afford to spend hundreds upon hundreds of dollars, thousands of dollars when you add up all the AEW pay-per-views for and also UFC and how much money you're having to spend for those pay-per-views when they're $79.99. I mean, I am so glad that the pay-per-view model is pretty much done. WWE did away with it 11 years ago, and the UFC starting in 2026 is doing the same thing, and thank freaking God it's happening. Because now I can finally tune into their fights without having to spend a shit ton of fucking money. Because I was not about to spend constantly spending the money on these events. Because it's not worth it. I'm sorry, it's not worth it. If you a lot of these and nothing against the UFC. I mean, there's still some talented fighters, but again, I'm being completely honest and upfront with you guys. The UFC for years has been suffering when it comes to not having star quality talent. I mean, yeah, Conor McGregor still fights every now and then, and the line is Amanda Nunez, one of the greatest pound for pound female fighters, one of the greatest pound for pound fighters, period, regardless of what gender. She's done with the UFC. She's retired, pretty much. And not having superstars that have personalities. Oh, you're an MMA fighter. You're a kickboxer. You're a wrestler in MMA. You're this, you're a flyweight. You're a middleweight. Ooh, you're a welterweight. Ooh, good for you. You're a tough guy, a tough girl. Oh, good for you. I mean, anybody that is a highly class trained athlete can get in a cage. But you got to give people a reason to give a shit to spend their hard-earned money. Just like AEW. I am a fan of AEW, but the pay-per-view model has not been great. Like for instance, Forbidden Door is coming up in less than a week. And honestly, guys, there are some good matches, but why? Why are they happening? Give me a reason to care. Give me a reason to spend $49.99 on another pay-per-view after you just put on your biggest pay-per-view in Arlington, Texas on July 12th, literally a month ago. You had Double or Nothing in May, all in July. There is nothing wrong with taking a break, Tony Khan, from having pay-per-views. And guys, I know I'm all over the place, but I'm making my point when it comes to the pay-per-view model. Because the WWE started this really. I mean, and now, fast forward 11 years later, we're seeing boxing events and we're seeing, again, like I mentioned, stand-up events and, all these different specials that are happening on, streaming services. Because that's the future of the entertainment industry. And I wish that Tony Khan would wake up and smell the damn roses and coffee and strike a deal, I don't know, with HBO Max to bring your entire library, not just past pay-per-views that were broadcasted live, but streaming the upcoming content. That way, if you have an HBO Max subscription, you're not having to pay extra money to view the damn event. I'm so glad that UFC, Dana White, and TKO Endeavor struck a deal 7.7 billion with a B, not an M for million, billion. 7 billion reasons why every single fight night and numbered PLE, formerly pay-per-views, is now going to be under one roof on Paramount Plus, and this will drive people to get a subscription if you are an MMA fan. Because to not have to spend extra money to view MMA, I think it's a great business move. And also another thing, people, I got friends. I've got friends that have talked about this stuff, and it's a lot of mixed emotions. And I've read, people's thoughts online when it comes to like getting back to the WWE deal with ESPN that was struck last week. When you think about this stuff and how the price, because of 29.99, again, essentially $30. There are people that do not have YouTube TV. I understand that. If you're on a tight budget, I get it. I get it. I firmly get it. But if you already have some form of a cable streaming service, you don't need to spend the 30 extra dollars, because that's how I'm going to do it. I'm going to keep using YouTube TV and just use my login information to tune in to WWE's PLEs starting in 2026. And I just wish that Tony Khan, would understand that the pay-per-view model is becoming basically extinct. Boxing's moving their stuff to Netflix, essentially, all their big fights. WWE, Raw on Netflix. PLEs internationally on Netflix. In the United States alone, WWE moving their PLEs to ESPN. Now, we don't know where NXT's PLEs are going to be, but we'll find out those details, I'm pretty sure, down the road. But I figured I'd give my thoughts on that, because also what's cool with this UFC deal is you're going to have CBS at times simulcasting, having Paramount Plus and CBS at the same time broadcasting the same events at times. Sometimes it'll be just Paramount Plus, and then sometimes it'll be Paramount Plus and CBS. Everybody gets to watch it. And if Tony Khan can strike a deal with HBO Max, because he's already on Max, if he can somehow put the pay-per-views as PLEs, where people, all they got to do, if you're already a Max subscriber, on an HBO Max subscriber, you ain't got to worry about spending $49.99 to watch a fucking pay-per-view. That's the beauty of not having the upcharges on WWE's content. Because Nick Khan stressed this, and he was asked this when he was breaking the news, talking about being asked, oh, is there going to be an upcharge? No. And again, I was pleasantly surprised that the WWE's streaming numbers with their streaming statistics and stuff, that they were not going to resort. I was sure that they were going to resort back to the pay-per-view model, but they didn't, and that's great. So congratulations to the Ultimate Fighting Championship and Dana White on reaching this 7.7 gargantuan deal with Paramount Plus that kicks in 2026. Now, moving on to the NFL division previews for a second week. Last week we kicked off our division previews. Myself and Ezra and Kevin and Joey gave our thoughts on the AFC North and the AFC South. And this week it is the AFC East and the AFC West. And I'm going to give my thoughts. And I know Joey and Ezra and Kevin have already given their thoughts. with the AFC East and the AFC West, so I figure why not give mine here on this special Thursday broadcast episode of the show. And starting out with the AFC East, and obviously you got the Buffalo Bills, the Miami Dolphins, the New England Patriots, the New York Jets. And we know that the Jets, the Patriots are in these rebuilding stages. And we don't know how these two teams are going to do, especially the Jets. I mean, coming off having Aaron Rodgers, one of his worst seasons statistically, when it comes to getting sacked a lot. And he could not get going with his receivers because a lot of the times he was spending times on his back. And you got to have an offensive line. And I know myself and Ezra and Kevin and Joey have preached this to the literal choir till the cows came freaking home, that you could have the greatest quarterback in the pocket, but that don't mean crap if you don't have an offensive line blocking for you. And that's the one thing that we discussed last week on the show about Joe Burrow and the Bengals, is even though Joe Burrow has a great cannon for an arm, and he has T. Higgins and Jamar Chase and all these great receivers and tight ends in Cincinnati, that's all great, and, well and gravy, but you got to have an offensive line to block for your quarterback. Otherwise, he's going to be spending times on his back, just like Aaron Rodgers did last year with the Jets. And even though Aaron Rodgers last year had a great year with Garrett Wilson, building that chemistry, Aaron Rodgers, no matter what he did, bringing in his buddies, formerly of Green Bay, such as, Lazard and just all these different pieces that were with him in Green Bay. He brought all of these weapons with him to the Jets. That didn't work out. He got Robert Saleh fired in the middle of the season last year because he didn't like the way he was coaching, and he didn't like his coaching style. Obviously, don't let him lie to you. Don't let his words deceive you in believing his words just because he's made a crap ton of money. Like, come on, we can all read through this garbage with Aaron. And obviously, Mike Williams, throwing him under the bus. Oh, he ran the wrong route. He stopped running the route. Own up to your mistakes, Mr. Rodgers. And don't even get me started on this clown. Because last week we talked about Aaron Rodgers with his new team in the Pittsburgh Steelers. And to our surprise, Ezra said that he believes that the Pittsburgh Steelers are going to finish dead last in the AFC North Division. And the Jets, back to the AFC East. All that being said, the Jets, I think, are not going to have a great year. I think the Jets are going to be the Jets. And it is quite a coincidence and ironic that the Jets are going to be playing the Pittsburgh Steelers in week 1 of the 2025 NFL regular season when that kicks off in September. So with that being said, I'm going to give the Jets at best between 5 and 12 or 6 and 11. But at worst, 3 wins or 4 wins, or even worse, 2 wins. I think the Jets are going to experience a lot of problems as the season progresses. The New England Patriots, same thing. Drake May being a young quarterback. He's got the tools to be great, but he's young. He doesn't have an experienced offensive line. He did not build, a consistent chemistry with his wide receivers. And the Patriots, ever since Tom Brady departed, ever since Mac Jones, ever since he was sent packing, the Patriots have been constantly, having to pick in the draft again. And to everybody, including myself and Ezra and Joey and Kevin, that brings us happy, happy, joy, joy. And I know Ezra's going to hate me when he hears this again, but I don't care. It's all in good fun. But anyways, the New England Patriots for the last couple of years have experienced adversities and injuries and inconsistency playing on offense and defense and the special teams. And I think it's going to be the same thing. I think that they're not going to be great again. I think that the Patriots are going to be, I would say again, at best 5-12, but worse, I would say they're going to have at least 3 wins or 4 wins if they finish worse. The Miami Dolphins. And this is the one team that confuses me because Dolphins quarterback Tua Tagovailoa is a great quarterback, but when he's healthy, because having Waddle and having Tyreek Hill, you can have all the greatest weapons to throw to, but you got to have an offensive line to block for you. Tua last year was so up and down with his quarterback mechanics as far as being consistent. There was a lot of times where he was good, and then there was weeks where you're like, Tua, what the hell are you doing? Like, just throwing some ducks, quack. Not another one, quack. I mean, another one, quack. I mean, come on, Tua, like get it together. I mean, there were times on this show, me and Ez and Kev and Joey, we were calling this dude Tua turned the ball over because that's what this dude was doing. There were times he was throwing balls in tight windows and he was missing his targets. And I just think that the Dolphins are just in a bind. They have talent, but I don't think they have enough roster pieces to make a deep push in the playoffs because, as we have documented on this show for the last 4 years going on since 2021, when the NFL season has gotten around and Tua has taken the field, and I know we talked about this 3 years ago when that injury, I think, yeah, it was 3 years ago, when the Dolphins took on the Bengals and that horrific head injury that Tua suffered on Thursday Night Football against Cincinnati. People were questioning him. Why are you letting this dude come back afterwards? Because he had a bit of an injury against the Bills. He got concussed and he still kept playing. Dude showed, that testicular fortitude, as Mick Foley would say, when he was wrestling in the WWF. Tua displayed that never say die mentality that he was going to constantly take the field and lead his team. I mean, I'm not denying that Tagovailoa has talent to be a great quarterback. But the problem with Tua is, like I've mentioned, and I'm not trying to sound like a broken record, guys, but it's the fact. It's not an opinion, it's a fact. The offensive line has been really their Achilles heel. And the Dolphins, I think their offense is gonna be, good to great. But man, when that schedule gets tough, that's where you really show your marbles. And I mean, okay, so with that being said, I'm gonna say that the Dolphins are gonna finish at best 9-8, but at worst between 8-9 or 7-10. Because the AFC conference itself, it is deep, very deep. And that leaves me with the Buffalo Bills and the reigning, defending MVP heading into the 2025 NFL regular season. That boy's a bad mamma jamma, Josh Allen. And Josh Allen, I think, is going to be adding fuel to the fire to motivate him to want to reach where he wants to be with his goals. Because I've always believed and said, if you want to be great at something, you got to go through your trials and tribulations to reach the promised lands and where you want to be at in your life. Whether you're an actor, you're a wrestler, you're a comedian, you're a musician like myself. I mean, I did not get great at my craft if I did not put in the time, put in the work, the dedication into being great. Not good or good enough or okay, great. Because if you believe that you can achieve anything, then you can accomplish whatever you want in your life. And Josh Allen, I know he has a lot of lofty goals. He wants to be, mentioned among the greats. And he's already proved as an individual player he can be a great player. But as we all know, for the last couple of years, Josh Allen's kryptonite has been Patrick Mahomes and the Kansas City Chiefs. And Josh Allen has a very, 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 very good roster of receivers and tight ends and running backs. He's got a deep roster. And I think Josh Allen and the Buffalo Bills are going to do something special this year. Now, I'm not saying they're going to make the Super Bowl because, man, the AFC conference, it is so loaded, and we'll get to those predictions in September when that first show comes around in the beginning of September. But when it comes to how I think the Bills are going to do, I think that I would say at best, they're going to have 14 wins. At least between 12 and 13 wins. Now, that's my thoughts on the AFC East division. Moving over to the AFC West. And this is where things get a very little bit of interesting. Because obviously, you got the Chiefs, you got the Broncos, you got the Chargers, and you got the Raiders. And I mean, I'll start with the Raiders while I'm at it. I mean, Pete Carroll leaving Seattle, going to Sin City, going to Las Vegas. Not just going into Sin City, my friends, but bringing in Geno Smith to Sin City. Gambling, going all in, bringing in the guy that he established a connection, a friendship with in Seattle when Geno had his renaissance and he had his little bit of a revival a couple of years ago when he became, I believe he was the comeback player of the year a couple of years ago in the 2023-24 year, I believe. Don't quote me on that. But anyways, the Raiders is interesting because they obviously got one of their best defenders in Crosby. And he is going to demand a lot of attention on the defensive side of the ball. And the Raiders, to me, is a team that their ceiling's not high. Because, I mean, we don't know how this team is going to be. But they still have some talent. But I just think that, again, I think that with how top-notch the AFC conference is, no matter how good to great Geno Smith does or Max Crosby does for the Las Vegas Raiders leading that defensive, side of the football, I think that the Raiders, they're going to have a lot of adversity at times this year. I mean, I would say, I'll be nice. I'll say the Raiders, they'll finish at best, I would say either 7-10, or I'll go on and say either 5-12 or 4-13. I mean, that is I don't trust the Raiders. I really don't. Moving on to the Denver Broncos, and this is going to be interesting because Bo Nix, the guy who was having a up and down year at the start of the year last year for the Broncos, got out of that phase of not having a great season as a rookie, where he was getting happy feet and throwing a lot of picks where people were coining him Mo Picks because he was throwing so many freaking interceptions. It's not even funny. I think Eli Manning would like a word with him, but I digress. But the Broncos, I think, is a very interesting team because they have a lot of young pieces. They have some veterans that have been there. And I think the Broncos are going to have a pretty solid year. I think that Bo Nix is going to improve as a quarterback. I don't think he'll experience that sophomore slump. I think that Nix will have a pretty solid year for Denver. I say Denver's right there in the mix. I say they finish between, I would say, here's my two best scenarios for Denver. I say 9-8, or even better, 10-7, or they barely miss the playoffs by the skin of their teeth by finishing with a record of 8-9. 8-9. So, I mean, I think Denver will have a pretty good year. And speaking of pretty good, if you are a LA Chargers fan, you got to feel pretty damn good about your chances as far as having a shot, because now that longtime receiver Keenan Allen is returning to the place that he called home for years and developed a chemistry and a connection with his quarterback, the gunslinger himself, and Justin Herbert. And this Chargers team, led by one of the best coaches in football, Jim Harbaugh. And you know, Harbaugh was smiling and grinning from ear to ear, blah, and was happy and that he was able to snag one of Herbert's best weapons on offense that he developed the chemistry with for the last several years. And I know last year during that Chargers season, the Chargers experienced a lot of ups and downs and adversities because not having that key number one weapon, because obviously Herbert had to develop chemistry with some of these young talents. And now that he's developed chemistry with some of his young receivers last year, now that he's had a full year with those guys, along with a veteran like Keenan Allen, I think that offense is going to flourish and they are going to put up numbers. And again, the Chargers are a very interesting team. Their defense at times can be good, and at times it can be very inconsistent. And I think that the Chargers, again, are going to charger it up in some shape, way, or form. And that's why I say, again, the Chargers are going to finish between either 9-8. I say 9-8. But if they did make the playoffs, I said they got to finish at least with 10 wins. Between 10 wins and 11 wins if they're going to make the playoffs. At worst, 8-9. Or 7-10. Moving on to the Kansas City Chiefs, and yes, the Kansas City Chiefs that we have been sick and tired of them having success in the National Football League, and obviously Patrick Mahomes, Travis Kelce, and company have won Super Bowls, and they have lost a couple of Super Bowls together, including last year against Philadelphia. That ass whipping of a lifetime committed by Philadelphia against Kansas City. And you know the Chiefs are out for revenge. Because Patrick Mahomes, I don't care, again, who he has at wide receiver. If he can develop chemistry with any of these young receivers, I mean, Xavier Worthy is a prime example. Last year, he started to develop a chemistry and a connection with Worthy pretty quickly. Now, one guy that he brought in that was not there a good chunk of the year was Hollywood Brown. And hopefully, for Chiefs fans' sake, that Hollywood Brown is going to be able to stay healthy. And the Chiefs are a very interesting team because obviously they still got Chris Jones and a whole bunch of other players around them. But I firmly believe, just like with Max Crosby in Las Vegas, Chris Jones is one of those guys that can take any second-year player or a guy who hasn't been around a long time with the organization He can take anybody on that squad on his side of the football, the defensive side of the football, and bring their games up. And Patrick Mahomes is the same way when it comes to being the quarterback. He essentially is a newer Tom Brady. And I know Randy hates hearing that, but I'm sorry, Randy, my brother. It is the facts are the facts. The truth is the truth. You want the truth, you can't handle the truth. Patrick Mahomes, if he develops chemistry with rookies or if he develops chemistries with second year players such as, like I mentioned, Xavier Worthy, if those guys can be a lethal combination on that football field, and again, we talked about it on this show, last year and the year before, Mahomes' numbers have been decreasing. He hasn't been putting up the numbers that he did 3, 4, 5, 6 years ago, 7 years ago. But the one thing that Kansas City's going to have to do this year, they're going to have to be more consistent because I'm sorry. Last year, that luck of the draw, luck of the Irish, whatever the hell you want to call it, miracles happening or whatever, divine intervention, whatever you want to use. Blessed by the football gods. I don't care what kind of examples or stuff like that you want to make this with. But the Chiefs last year got lucky a lot of the times with some of these wins. The referees with the flags and kickers missing kicks and quarterbacks missing throws and or quarterbacks throwing interceptions or a fumble or a dropped pass. I mean, you name it. Or the defender making a mistake and God forbid somebody putting their hands on Mahomes. I mean, oh, flag. You touch him, flag. Grab his face mask, flag. Oh, a receiver's running a corner route down the field, flag. Travis Kelce's trying to run a pattern over the middle, flag. Like, I get it. It's aggravating. And the Chiefs last year won with some of the most incredible of bullshit victories beyond bullshit victories, one after the other. I mean, there were times, and I believe it was the Chargers game last year. When they were facing it was the Chargers game, actually. The Chargers kicker. Can't think of his name off the top of my head. But the guy who was kicking with him at the time, he kicked a potential game-winning field goal. Doink! Missed the field goal. However, the guy that they had, backing up Harrison Butker and the backup kicker, he one of the games the Chiefs won. He kicked the field goal. Doink! 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 And it went in. Like, what the hell? Come on. Like, make it make sense. I mean, I can't. You know what I mean? Like it's crazy. I mean, but I get it. The Chiefs are the Chiefs. A win's a win. A W's a W. I understand the logics of football winning. It doesn't have to be pretty. The fact of the matter is if you get a victory, hey, you get a victory. That's all that matters. Those are my thoughts. Oh, and real quick. Now, with that being said, I'm torn on this because Travis Kelce's numbers last year was not the greatest. And obviously neither was Mahomes. I'm torn with how I think the Chiefs are going to do. I would say I have the Chiefs finishing at least with 12 wins, going 12-5, or they somehow bullshit their way to 14, 15 wins, whatever the hell. Because mark my words, there's going to be a time where the officials are going to put their stamp on the game and get it into the Chiefs' favor. That's not a prediction. That, my friends, is a spoiler, as Paul Heyman would say. those are my thoughts on the AFC East and the AFC West. And next week, ladies and gentlemen, we switch over to the NFC North and the NFC South as we move over to the NFC Conference. And ladies and gentlemen, the football season, before you know it, it's gonna be starting and it's gonna be incredible. Because I know myself and Ezra and Joey and Kevin and obviously Hijacker, we've been looking forward to doing, and if Randy wants to participate too, we can as well because we love Randy. We love when Randy participates as well. And obviously his dad, William Gyron, as well. But we love doing the prediction battles, and we cannot wait to do these prediction battles once again when the regular season gets underway with the Cowboys and the Eagles, the defending champions of the NFL for the year of 2025-26. Again, folks, you can follow us on Twitter or X at Owen_Sports Show, Facebook.com/Nation Sports Show, where we are live on Tuesday nights most of the time at our normal start time of 7 p.m. Eastern, 6 Central, 4 p.m. Pacific, YouTube.com/Nation Sports Show. But this week we had to move the show due to some scheduling. And again, what better time to bring you two special shows than this week? Last night, but obviously Ezra and Joey and Kevin giving their thoughts on the AFC East and the AFC West, and tonight on for once on a Thursday night, two episodes of our Nation Sports Show. Now, moving on to one of the biggest shocking stories that happened over the weekend. And too bad this was the preseason. Because if you're living under a rock, Cam Little, the place kicker for the Jacksonville Jaguars, kicked a 70-yard field goal. That's right. A 70-yard field goal. Unfreaking believable that even happened. The fact that he made that with enough room to spare. I'm just thinking he's probably going to try it again in the regular season, and he should. Because if he does, that will go down in the history books, because it's a shame that officially we cannot count that as the record, because that would be an NFL season record. 70-yard field goal. I am not kidding you. Check it out. It is breathtaking. Breathtaking. Unbelievable stuff. Unbelievable stuff. I still can't even believe it even happened in the first place. I mean, we have seen some crazy touchdown records. Tom Brady, obviously, at one point had the touchdown record. Then Peyton Manning had the touchdown record. Or, excuse me, Dan Marino had it. Then Peyton Manning had it. Then Tom Brady had it. And then freaking Peyton had it again. And then Patrick Mahomes broke it. I mean, we're going to see records be broken at all costs. I think at some point during the regular season, Little was going to give it a good old college try again to boom a 70-yard plus kick again. And also, real quick, I want to bring this up too. Speaking of the preseason, CD Lamb did not see the ref because he got trucked by the official. If you haven't seen the clip, it's freaking hilarious. freaking hilarious. I also want to talk about these numbers that Micah Parsons is demanding to be paid. Because, like we talked about last week, he wants to be paid. And we're going to keep harping on this when it comes to Jerry Jones. If Jerry Jones is not willing to spend the freaking money to pay his top talent, when the next talent at that position of Micah Parsons, playing gets paid even more money, boom, the market gets raised when it comes to the asking price of reaching an agreement. I mean, it is ridiculous, absolutely ridiculous how Jerry Jones continuously, and we talked about this last week, but it's going to be stressed again this week. Pay these guys that deserve to be paid. Good Lord. Like, spend the money while you can. You're worth a shit ton of money. Spend it. But spend it wisely. Good Lord. But just wanted to bring that up again. I mean, some of these players, are still looking for deals. Obviously, we talked about last week, not just Parsons, but obviously Trey Hendrickson is still seeking a deal with Cincinnati. But nothing's been made official. But as soon as we get word of those numbers, we will report those as soon as possible. Now, before I get out of here, I do want to talk about Tuesday night's concert at the Fillmore in Charlotte. The Struts with special guests Dirty Honey. This was an amazing, amazing show. Dirty Honey kicked things off, and they absolutely crushed it, like they always do. They played for 45 minutes, kicked your ass, took names, and did not let up. From the opening song of Gypsy all the way to the closing track of Rolling Sevens, Mark LaBelle and company absolutely dominated that stage. And the highlight for me was hearing a brand spanking new tune from Dirty Honey that is yet to be released and recorded, titled Too Good at Being Bad. And this song is full of so much swagger. It is punchy as hell, it's groovy as hell, and listening to this for the very first time in person, my jaw hit the floor. I was like, my God, this song essentially, it's done. It needs to be recorded. Everything from the verses, the pre-chorus, the chorus itself, the second verse, the pre-chorus again, then the chorus again, then the solo. It's written. It's done. All that needs to be done is to go into the studio and professionally record it and put it out as a single on the next record. And also what was cool is LaBelle said from the stage that, come say hi. You want anything signed or any, what have you? Come check us out. Say hello to us. So, and the Struts also, before I get to my story with Dirty Honey, the Struts absolutely killed it. The Struts' energy on that stage. It is just amazing the amount of energy that band has. And also, real quick, before I get to the Strut show, what's also cool and noteworthy um what's really cool, and this just hit me, Dirty Honey and the Struts are gonna be on this Bad Company tribute record. And the Struts are doing Rock and Roll Fantasy, and Dirty Honey are doing one of my favorite Dirty Honey tunes, Rock Steady. And again, back to the Struts. Lead singer Luke Spiller. That dude has such charisma, such a presence on a live stage. That dude commands an audience. That entire audience was on their feet, dancing, singing along to every single song. And when Luke Spiller said from the stage that he was not feeling great, I really couldn't tell. Only reason why I kind of could tell was that during the performance of Dirty Sexy Money, he had to go down a lower octave, to not, damage his chords or whatever, which is fine. I mean, I get it. It's a real live show. God forbid, what a concept. Don't get me started on that. But I do want to bring that up real quick, going back to Dirty Honey. During Dirty Honey's set, Mark LaBelle's microphone went out for a split second during Don't Put Out the Fire during the towards the end. And when they did the big call and response to Jaden being the drummer, getting the crowd going, clapping their hands, feeling it, his mic went out. Mark's mic went out. So they had to call an audible, buying time, and they're doing it again, and they're just buying time. And then eventually, whatever tech issue that LaBelle had, it was fixed and resolved, and the show went on as resumed as possible. And that was the only minor mistake that happened during the show when it comes to tech. Hey, it's a real live show. Ain't no backing tracks at all on between both Dirty Honey and the Struts. I mean, you could not ask for a better pair of bands. Just two great bands, all killer, no bullshit, no backing tracks, nothing. Just real, live, pure, unapologetic rock and roll. And Luke Spiller, the Struts, he gives me, and I've always said this, and I remember when I first was at the Struts' concert in 2017, when they first opened up for the Foo Fighters, I never heard of the guys. And this was during a time when I really didn't care, for newer bands. I didn't go seeking for new bands. But I remember that night. I walked into the Colonial Life Arena in Columbia, South Carolina, October 17th, 2017, and I remember walking in the middle of the Strut set, and immediately I was captivated with what I was hearing with my ears. I was like, hey, what is this? I am hooked. Immediately hooked on how Luke commands an audience, how he's constantly singing his ass off, performing his ass off, fronting the band. The whole band that night sounded incredible, tight as can be. And at that moment, they won me over and I became a fan. And I was so proud of those guys because that was a great choice by Dave Grohl to handpick the Struts to be their direct support on that tour. So really cool that they got to do that. And I was at a Carolina Rebellion Festival in 19 and they played that one as well. Or no, excuse me, 2018. Not 19, because Epicenter Festival was the one in Rockingham. But at Carolina Rebellion in 2018, the Struts played. And they were great. And then this is where the Dirty Honey connection comes in for me. So, Dirty Honey was like the first major modern rock new band that I outright discovered. And for the life of me, I cannot remember these two individuals that I met from the Georgia area at the Epicenter Festival. I did not get a chance to check out Dirty Honey's set. That would have been great to check them out in my hometown of, here in Rockingham. But I didn't get to do it because at that point, my mindset was if I don't know who the band is, I'm not going to check them out. But I'm glad that these people showed me Dirty Honey's music and said, okay, they asked me, they said, before we play this, do you like Aerosmith and Led Zeppelin and AC/DC? I said, sure, absolutely. And I said, okay, this is what basically kind of sounds like. And I was like, all right. And I think the first song they played for me was Down the Road. And I was immediately captivated because it was different. Because mainstream rock music does not sound like that. It doesn't have that gritty, that intensity. It doesn't have that grit, that power, that raw, unapologetic sound that punches you in the face. And I remember saying to myself, one day I had to check out these guys live. And I remember fast forwarding to September of 2019 and meeting the guys in Dirty Honey and the lineup at the time, the original lineup that formed that band, obviously Mark LaBelle, Justin Smolian, and John Nato, and the drummer at the time was Corey Coverstone. And I met the guys during Alter Bridges set, and they were super cool dudes, down to earth guys. Took a picture with them. Awesome, awesome time. And then the pandemic happened. And obviously everybody's touring, touring cycles and making money on the road was put on pause because of the pandemic. And Dirty Honey's momentum seemed to be going, up in smoke by this point because they had such a momentum going on for them, opening up for Guns N' Roses, opening up for Alter Bridge and Slash and Miles Kennedy and the Conspirators and the Who and so many countless others. But they didn't let the pandemic stop them. They made a killer debut album following their debut EP. And then my first concert back, and I'll never forget this. I'm sitting on Zoom with Ezra. And Ezra tells me, hey, did you read and hear about Dirty Honey's upcoming tour? I said, no, what's up? I said, yeah, they're going on tour. I was like, Ez, what's the closest date? I gotta go. I need to get my concert fixed. And he said, Johnson City, Tennessee. I said, that's it. I'm going. And it was in June of 21. I caught him live again, but caught him live for the first time on a headlining set. And at that point, I was hooked on that band. And I went to countless shows afterwards. I went to their opening show, opening up date with the Black Crows in Raleigh. I went to the Columbia, South Carolina show at the Senate with the Mammoth, Wolfgang's band. Great double build. Both bands played the same amount of songs and set times. Then in 22, I was in Vegas for about 5 days. I went primarily for the Metallica and Billy Joel concerts in Vegas that weekend. But I'm glad that I checked out Ticketmaster and was checking their tour dates because I remembered that Mammoth and Dirty Honey were going to be on the West Coast, and then Lord and behold, they were in Vegas that night. And I said to my dad, "We're going," and we did. It was a hell of a show at the House of Blues. And then fast forward in April, Mammoth was supposed to play with Dirty Honey that night, but Mammoth or Wolfgang and some of the members of the band were sick with COVID. So Dirty Honey took the stage and they played for nearly 2 hours. And it was one of the most chaotic, in a good way, craziest concerts I've ever experienced. They played an extra song in the encore. And then it was amazing. An amazing show. Played for nearly 2 hours. And at that point, that was full circle for me. To go back to the place that I first met the guys. When they were nobodies. And over the last couple of years, now they got a new drummer, Jaden Bean, replacing Corey Coverstone. And Corey left the band on good terms, and he said, and I got to give the guy credit, he did not want to do the touring lifestyle anymore. And I totally get it because not everybody is up for the touring gig. And I'm glad that I got to catch Corey with the band playing headlining shows, on several different occasions and opening up for the Black Crows and Alter Bridge and stuff like that, and all the countless headlining shows, whether it be in, like I said, Johnson City, Tennessee, or Columbus, South Carolina, or Vegas, or Raleigh. I mean, great drummer. But then when Jaden Bing came aboard, he single-handedly changed their sound. He made them evolve into a much better overall band because the second record that they made, Can't Find the Breaks, when the first single, Won't Take Me Alive, came out, that slapped me in the face. I mean, just unreal. And then the title track came out, Can't Find the Breaks. Amazing. Then catching them in arena with Guns N' Roses. Amazing. Amazing stuff. To hear them in a arena, they owned it. I was like, man, if these guys can get bigger and bigger, one of these days they can be headlining arenas. Because that's what we need, ladies and gentlemen, as rock and roll and metal fans. We need to have modern bands that believe in creating art and music and none of this AI, artificial intelligence bullshit of creating music, because that is not real life art. That is fake. We need to have real, pure bands creating art and showing it to the world. And Dirty Honey is the first band that I gravitated towards, and I proclaimed that's my band because they're around my age in a way. And again, getting back to the drummer, Jaden Bing, and then that Charlotte show in 23, that was amazing at the Underground. And they played an extra song that wasn't on the set list because the crowd was so good that night. And then for a couple of years, I didn't catch them. I had chances to go check them out, last year, but I didn't get to make it. But I'm finally glad that I got to make it on Tuesday night because they crushed it. The Struts crushed it. And also during the Struts' set, I, along with my father and mother, walked over and met the guys in Dirty Honey. It was the coolest thing ever for me as a musician to speak to Mark LaBelle, to shake his hand, to give him his flowers on the music that he and the rest of the band has created over the years. It's incredible. And then talking to John Nato, one of the greatest rock guitarists of the modern era. The dude can play with the best of them. He is so good at creating riffs. I would equate him, he is like a modern Joe Perry. How there is literally riffs beneath those fingers coming out of him at all costs. And I asked John from the get-go, dude, and I told Mark and I told John, and later when I spoke to Jaden Bean, I told them, all three of them. I didn't get a chance to speak to Justin Smollian, the bass player. I imagine he was busy and stuff, but I got a chance to speak to three out of the four members. But I told the three guys about how floored and amazed I was at how great Too Good at Being Bad is. I told Mark, I told John, and I told Jaden, it's like, dude, that song is ready to go to the studio. And Mark told me at the booth, the merch booth, that that they're looking to go into the studio at the end of the year and record their next record. And I cannot wait for that song to come out because that song, it has got the swagger that Won't Take Me Alive does, but even more. It is raunchy as hell, sleazy as hell, unapologetic. Here it is. Take it or leave it. And just, it's a great song. It's a great song, and I cannot wait for the whole world to hear it when it does come out. So speaking to John, and I asked him, I said, dude, how did you come up with that? Because that song already sounds like it's ready to go and finished. And he said, man, that idea for the riff came to me at soundcheck. I'm like, holy shit, that's amazing to come up with that. The song basically wrote itself. And this is old school, ladies and gentlemen. You know, writing songs on the road while you're touring, that is where it's at. That is real art right there. Because it is impossible to put out album after album in one calendar year unless you have that work mentality that you have so much material that you're willing to go into the studio and record. Otherwise, there have been AI artists and bands that have been putting out a single and a freaking record in 1 week. That is impossible. Impossible. And I know this is primarily a sports show, ladies and gentlemen, but I really felt like talking about music here towards the back end of the show to give some more extra content. And plus, I'm just coming off that concert from Tuesday night in Charlotte. But that song is killer. And it sounds like it's already ready to be recorded. So hats off to the guys for playing this new track in front of the entire audience. The crowd ate it up. They loved it. We all loved it. And I spoke to Jaden Bean, and just it was so cool talking to him about drums and talking about our gear, what we're playing, and all of that. And just super cool dude, super laid back. And I told Mark, I told John, and I told Jaden himself, I said, dude, when you came aboard to Dirty Honey, you added to their sound and you made it even more fuller. And you guys have evolved into a much tighter band. And I pointed it out, his backing vocals. It's like, oh, you could hear him? I was like, yep, I could hear him very good. It's okay, good. Because sometimes, those vocals, sometimes they don't cut through, sometimes they do and they don't. And I'm like, yeah, I totally get it. But, and then to wrap this up, we got a couple of their shirts and we had Mark LaBelle sign the shirt. Super cool guys. We were trying to get the other guys to sign it, but they were out and about doing other things. But stuff like that happens. I mean, when you're in a band that's touring, you're out mingling with the crowd and talking to the audience and hanging out with the crew and stuff like that. So we were trying to get their signatures, but it didn't work out. But at least we got Mark LaBelle's signature. That was very cool that he was willing to do that. Just really cool. The guys were super grateful to the audience and to the fans that came up to the merch booth and talked to them. Super cool guys. If this tour is coming near you, do not hesitate. Go check it out. It's a great tour. All live rock and roll. That is the way it needs to be, ladies and gentlemen. And I think that is going to do it for this special Thursday edition of our Nation Sports Show. Again, 2 shows in a row following yesterday's show on Wednesday with Ezra and Joey and Kevin giving their thoughts on the AFC East and the AFC West. And you can follow us on Twitter or X at Owen_Sports Show, Facebook.com/Nation Sports Show, and where normally we are live on Tuesday nights, where it is a fun time to be a sports fan talking about the National Football League as the NFL regular season is vastly approaching. YouTube.com/Nation Sports Show, 7 o'clock Eastern, 6 o'clock Central, 4 o'clock on the West Coast. You can also follow the Nation's Corner on Twitter or X at Nation's Corner, Facebook, Instagram, and where the guys and gal are live on most Saturday nights, where it is all right for fighting. Talking a little pro wrestling, RASSLIN, that spells wrestling. YouTube, Instagram, Facebook are all at the Nation's Corner. The guys and gal are live on most Saturday nights, as I stated. 7 p.m. Eastern, 6 Central, 4 p.m. Pacific on the West Coast. And with that being said, you can also follow me on Twitter at Steven_Wyand. You can also follow Ezra at Deadman469 on Twitter. You can also follow Joey at Roll_Tide 1992. And you can also follow our boy K-Rod Kevin Rory at that Niner Gang 10. And you can also follow our boy Hijacker Mike at Mr. Mac on Twitter. You can also follow his cigar channel on YouTube and the Twitter page, Smoke in the Bay, THA Bay, not THE, Smoke in the Bay. Not smoking the Bay, smoking the Bay. THA Bay. And with that being said, ladies and gentlemen, I want to thank you for tuning in to a special Thursday edition of our Nation Sports Show at our normal time for a second consecutive night at 7 o'clock Eastern, 6 o'clock Central, 4 o'clock on the West. And we will see you next week. Same time, same YouTube by God channel. Looking forward to continuing our discussions on the National Football League as we move over now to the NFC Conference. The NFC North and the NFC South is the next two divisions on the docket, followed by in the next week, in 2 weeks' time, with the NFC East and the NFC West. And with that being said, for everybody here on our Nation Sports Show, for K-Rod, Kevin Rory, for JT, Joey Thornton, for Ezra Vickery, for Hijacker Mike, for Randy Geyer, William Geyer, and our favorite kitty cat in the whole wide world, and our secret mascot, Sprocket. I have been your host for this special Thursday edition, turning back the clock like we used to back in 2021, being on a Thursday night. Figured a lot is going on, the UFC deal, the NFL stuff, and hell, mixing a little bit of music talk right there at the end, talking, getting my story about how I'm such a big fan of Dirty Honey and all of that stuff. Great night of music 2 nights ago on Tuesday. Hope you guys had a great week. Hope you guys have a great up and coming weekend. We will see you next week for our regular scheduled show on Tuesday. Once again, we had to flex out these two shows this week. I figured, Ez and Joey wanted to give their thoughts on Wednesday. Figure I'd give mine here tonight on a Thursday night. And Kevin giving his thoughts as well on a Wednesday night as well. So with that being said, for K-Rod, Kevin Rory, JT, Joey Thornton, Ezra Vickery, Randy Gyron, William Gyron, Hijacker Mike, and our kitty cat, secret mascot in the world, Sprocket. I have been your host for this evening, Stephen Wyand, and we will see you next week for our regular scheduled show back on a Tuesday night where we will cover the world of sports. Whatever we get into, NFL, NBA, UFC, it doesn't matter. As long as it is in the world of sports. And we might even mix in a little bit of wrestling talk. Who the hell knows? Tune in next week as we continue our coverage of the world of sports, especially with the National Football League as we move over to the NFC North and the NFC South, the first two conferences or the first two divisions in the NFC Conference. Take care of yourselves. Enjoy the rest of your week and upcoming weekend. Take care, everybody. Peace.
Turn me up.